With me now to discuss is the host of the William Hall Show. Thanks for being here tonight, William.
Thank you.
Great. So today the defense begins presenting its case, its side of the story. What are your big takeaways so far about what we're hearing from the defense and even from the trial overall now that the prosecution is rested?
Well, yes, right now what we're looking at is, like I said, the first day of the defense where they actually brought in one of their use of force experts this time, and that was Barry Broad. He did a very good job when doing the direct questioning, but honestly, I think they need to have a slightly better person in that position kind of talking about this, because when he was under cross-examination, he was starting to kind of fumble a little bit, kind of start to agree with the prosecution on certain things. So overall, I think it's a good start for them. Absolutely. He did, confirm what we would want the defense to actually confirm for a witness like that the use of force was justified. He did say that. So that part was great, but we'll have to kind of stay tuned for who else they have in line.
And really all that the defense needs is reasonable doubt in the jury's mind. And do you think that's been made clear so far, especially when we look at some of these different use of force experts who've come in, the prosecutors brought in two who actually contradicted each other? One who said that it was not an accurate or a good or necessary use of force as Chauvin used. The other one said that it was. And of course, as you're mentioning with the defense use of force expert today, saying that it was not a deadly use of force as Chauvin was using against Floyd. And then, of course, we brought in back out over the last few days and weeks that we've heard in the trial. We've heard the fentanyl, Floyd's bad heart, the resisting of arrest. It goes on and on. Do you think the reasonable doubt is there now in the jury's minds?
I think that it absolutely is, if they're actually paying attention to what's going on with those two use of force experts. I mean, usually in a trial, you have the prosecution actually, all their witnesses agree on everything. And then on the defense, that's when you hear something different. But we actually were able to see, which is very rare, where the prosecution's own witnesses disagree on two different things there. And we know that the latest guy that they actually had that was doing that was actually talking about the use of force was on Trevor Noah. He's very far left-wing kind of guy. So honestly, I hope that the jury is paying attention to this, because that is not what's supposed to happen. And if they can actually show this and the jury is paying attention to these things, then I think they'll realize that it's not provable beyond a reasonable doubt.
And of course, as we also saw from the defense today, they were showing video from Floyd's 2019 arrest in which he acted very similar when it came to resisting arrest and popping pills, which is what he's accused of doing in late May of 2020 when he ended up passing away. He is accused of putting some of the fentanyl in his mouth when officers were approaching him. Do you think that will play in at all as well when we look back at Floyd's past with his 2019 arrest and even what we heard from his girlfriend just a few weeks ago, saying that 2 months before his 2020 arrest, Floyd had actually had another OD of drugs and had to recover for several days. And he was exhibiting the same signs and symptoms that he was when Officer Chauvin and the other three approached him that day.
I think it absolutely will play into the perspective of things. And not to mention, his friend also is involved in this, where he is looking at pleading the fifth at this point. He doesn't want to self-incriminate because he is the dealer. He is the guy that may wind up actually getting charged with third-degree murder in this situation. So I think it's very important. George Floyd is a person that has a big drug history past, and I hope that the jury actually takes this into consideration, because this all plays into what's happening here. It could have all been preventable if he wasn't using the counterfeit the $20 bill, if he wasn't taking the drugs. These things need to be taken into consideration when we're talking about this kind of a trial. And I know that the prosecution doesn't want to look at this kind of stuff, but it is very important, because if he's eliciting these same behaviors, if we know that he's a habitual liar, he's somebody that when they got on the scene there, he was talking about his dead mother, all of these things that would justify the fact that, hey, maybe he's not telling the truth in these situations when he's talking about the fact that he can't breathe. That means a lot to this trial, and I hope that a jury looks at that.
And I think it's interesting to point out, as you're mentioning with the drug dealer, Maurice Hall, he's afraid of opening himself up to possible third-degree murder charges. And it's interesting that the prosecution didn't want his testimony in exchange for immunity. And yet they claim that drugs didn't have any influence on Floyd's death. And I think that fact speaks for itself, that they weren't going to exchange immunity for Maurice Hall's testimony. But William Hall, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me.